Aries, this week is not asking you to become someone new. It is asking you to answer for the person you already know you are becoming. There is a difference. Reinvention can be exciting because it gives you permission to imagine a different identity. Judgment is less glamorous and more powerful. It asks you to look at the evidence of your life, hear the call you have been avoiding, and decide whether you are willing to live in alignment with what you already know. The cosmic weather for this reading is intentionally quiet. No verified astrological events or house map transits were supplied for this week, so I am not going to manufacture a celestial storyline that is not there. That makes the tarot card even more important. Judgment becomes the central lens for your week, not punishment, not shame, but evaluation, awakening, and the moment when a private truth becomes impossible to keep postponing. Your card is Judgment. This card is often misunderstood because its name sounds severe. But judgment is not about being condemned. It is about being called. It represents the moment when you can no longer pretend you did not hear the message. Something in you knows which chapter is complete, which apology is overdue, which decision has already been made internally, which habit belongs to an older version of you, and which opportunity requires you to stop asking for permission. For Aries, this card creates an interesting tension. You are often comfortable with action, but judgment is not impulsive action. It is action after recognition. It asks you to make a move because you have examined the pattern, not because you are restless. Your central thesis this week is simple: stop negotiating with the version of you that has already expired. In love, judgment asks for emotional honesty without theatrics. If you are in a relationship, notice where the same conversation keeps returning in different clothing. Maybe the subject changes but the wound is the same. Maybe you keep debating details when the real question is whether trust can be rebuilt, whether effort is mutual, or whether you are both willing to change a pattern instead of merely discussing it. You do not need to force a final answer, but you do need to stop pretending the real question is smaller than it is. If you are single, this card can reveal how strongly your past is still shaping your standards. That does not mean you should lower them. It means you should separate discernment from defense. Are you rejecting people because they are genuinely wrong for you, or because vulnerability would require you to risk being seen again? Judgment favors choices that come from self-knowledge rather than reflex. In work, this is a week for reviewing what your effort is actually building. Aries can move fast enough to confuse momentum with progress. Judgment asks you to look at outcomes. Which project deserves renewed commitment? Which one is surviving only because you have already invested time in it? Which responsibility keeps draining energy without creating value? There may be a professional decision that becomes clearer when you stop asking, "Can I keep doing this?" and start asking, "Do I respect what this is turning me into?" With money, the card favors accountability. Not fear, not restriction for its own sake, but an honest look at cause and effect. Review a recurring expense, a financial promise, or a pattern of spending that is tied to mood, urgency, or identity. You may discover that the issue is not the amount itself. The issue may be that your money is supporting priorities you no longer claim to have. Judgment invites you to make your financial behavior match your current values. For health and energy, pay attention to what your body has been telling you repeatedly. This is not about diagnosing yourself or turning every sensation into a sign. It is about noticing patterns. Which routines reliably leave you feeling stronger? Which habits predictably scatter your energy? Which boundaries help you sleep, think, or recover better? Your body often gives feedback long before your mind is ready to change. This week, treat that feedback as information rather than inconvenience. For your week day by day, use each day as a deliberate checkpoint rather than a prediction. On Wednesday, name the issue you have been avoiding in the clearest language possible. Do not solve it yet. Just remove the fog. One honest sentence can change the entire emotional temperature of a week. On Thursday, review the evidence. What has happened repeatedly? What have you promised yourself before? What changed, and what did not? Judgment becomes useful when memory is specific. On Friday, identify one place where pride has made a decision harder than it needs to be. Aries strength is powerful, but strength does not require pretending you never misjudged a situation. Correcting course is not weakness. It is leadership. On Saturday, make space for a conversation, reflection, or private decision that has been waiting for your full attention. Avoid rushing to announce anything. Let the decision become solid inside you before you make it public. On Sunday, consider forgiveness, but define it accurately. Forgiveness does not mean restoring access, forgetting what happened, or removing consequences. It can simply mean refusing to let the past keep collecting emotional rent from your present. On Monday, choose one behavior that proves you believe your own conclusion. If you decided you need a boundary, state it. If you decided a project matters, schedule the work. If you decided something is over, stop feeding it with daily attention. On Tuesday, look back at the week and ask whether your actions matched the truth you identified on Wednesday. You do not need perfection. You need evidence that you are no longer arguing with yourself. Your 3 journal prompts are these. First prompt: what truth in my life keeps returning because I have acknowledged it intellectually but not acted on it? Second prompt: which version of myself am I still protecting even though I no longer want to live by that version's rules? Third prompt: what decision would become simpler if I stopped trying to make everyone understand it? For your weekly guidance, I want you to complete what I will call the verdict page. Take one sheet of paper and divide it into 3 sections: release, answer, act. Under release, write one behavior, obligation, resentment, or identity you know is complete. Under answer, write the call you keep hearing, the thing you know deserves your attention now. Under act, write one concrete action that can be completed within 48 hours. Not a life plan. Not a dramatic declaration. One action. Send the message. Cancel the commitment. Make the appointment. Open the document. Move the money. Say no. Say yes. Judgment becomes transformative when insight crosses the border into behavior. There is another layer to this card that matters for you. Judgment can bring up the fear that changing your mind will make you look inconsistent. But consistency with an old decision is not integrity if new information has changed the truth. You are allowed to revise. You are allowed to admit that something once fit and no longer does. You are allowed to become more accurate. This week, maturity looks less like defending every past choice and more like responding honestly to what the present is showing you. Also watch the temptation to turn awakening into urgency. You may recognize something clearly and immediately want to rebuild your entire life around it. Slow down enough to distinguish revelation from reaction. A true realization can survive a night of sleep, a careful conversation, and a practical test. You do not have to prove that you have changed by making the biggest possible move. You prove it by making the next aligned move and then repeating that alignment. The deeper lesson here is that you do not need another sign before you respect what you already know. Aries, sometimes the bravest thing is not charging into the unknown. Sometimes it is admitting that the known has already changed you. There is a version of courage that looks like fire, and there is a version that looks like accountability. This week asks for the second. Your weekly affirmation is, I answer the truth I already hear, and I let my actions confirm who I have become. Carry that with you through September 1st. Subscribe so your next weekly reading is waiting for you. Trust the timing. The stars have spoken.